action coil noise. There's things involving the monitor being slightly out of focus and so on. And so there's been a whole. That's amazing. What is that? Wow.
Somebody's throwing.
People of the future who watch this talk, there is a whale literally being murdered. But I am such a professional, I will not think of the whale, but of the future. So again, emulation turns digital aspects of computers into a modular and ultimately portable environment. However, it's programmatically done. Whether it's taking the programs and making them run, porting BASIC to run in some new version of BASIC, or simulating the entirety of the computer experience enough for you to be able to experience it relatively recently. And you can argue that maybe perhaps part of the magic of older computer stuff was that it would take you a while to get it to run, or that there would be a delay, or that there would be a feedback loop. And of course, you can never emulate the social aspects, the personal feelings, your youth into it. But you can certainly emulate other pieces of it. So that's kind of a rough idea of what's going on with emulation. It's more of an idea than a specific routine or anything like that. And so I was involved in something called the Emularity. And the Emularity, which I had previously called JSMS, but which expanded beyond that, was this ubiquitous loading system meant to be cross-platform, enabling you to bring JavaScript-based emulators onto browsers everywhere. And I do mean everywhere. It's got this logo, and that's what it represents. That's computers within computers within computers, and that they can be any kind and push them anywhere. For instance, a common one is, does it run Doom? And a lot of things run Doom, including, this is a Link New York City system that they just installed this summer that has music, and it had a web browser. And because it has a web browser, I got Doom running on it. And so these are phones at a Sprint store while I was waiting for a phone to be repaired. So I'm just making them run Doom, because why not? Here's a machine that's not going to get sold at Best Buy, because who's going to buy a Jaguar now? And here's a group in Australia who are linking to the Internet Archive and connecting to the Emularity, and they built their own little custom video game system for the summer so that they could connect to it and play the games. And these were arcade games being emulated in San Francisco that are playing in Australia and New Zealand. It's this weird, wacky world, right? So the idea is everything, everywhere, easily, and everlasting. So that's the idea of the Emularity, the idea of pushing us away from how do I get it running to what am I going to do with it now that I have it. So back to the Emularity itself. The Emularity, again, is this program load set that's been designed to be a framework for JavaScript emulators. Right now it does two. MAME and DOSBox. We've got 2 or 3 others that we're looking at. There's an intention. We're probably going to have an Amiga emulated within a month. We're probably going to have a Macintosh emulated this year. And we're going to do this, and it's going to go up, and then they'll join it. So right now it's just Windows and DOS and Dagan. And I turned off notifications. I mean, look, I'm the Windows guy in the room, but I'll tell you, it works great except for when it really doesn't, and then it's awful. And anyway, so MAME and DOSBox. MAME controls many, 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 many platforms, including consoles, arcade games, and computers, which is why I base things off it. There are a bunch of emulators of a bunch of systems out there, but MAME really has had this ubiquity that has grown. They've paid a price for it in speed. They're not the fastest emulator, but they have a, Jesus, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Take me. Now I'll find out who my real friends on Facebook are. Because this will be positive, right? They'll be like, this talk is going great. This will be like a reality show. Pops up Kevin Savick. Oh, he nailed this one. This one's amazing.
Put him off the island.
I think he'll require a co-speaker. MAME, which again stood for Multiple Arcade Machine Emulator, but has now become known as, it's been backronymed into something else. Basically, it's able to emulate 30,000 different things. So it's like very, very wide stance, right? And for the Apple II, there's a whole bunch of support for the the platform that is kind of like built up, especially over the past 2 years, that's particularly put together. So MAME currently has functioning support for all of these Apple II variants. So you're talking about, the Apple II, the 2 Plus, and you'll see that whatever they can get their hands on in terms of a ROM set, they're more than happy to kind of use their pre-built system. And so some of those, a Province or a Laser or a Maxi, these are like a lot of Apple II variants that some people might never, we happen to have a Province upstairs today, but you don't have a Unitron AP2. You might not ever want one, but it's there. And the Spanish version of the 2E, the ability to bring up these alternate platforms and know whether or not they work with your system or your version of Lawless Legends is really critical.
Wait, I need that.
So it has support for a whole bunch of hardware cards as well. So there's these, a whole bunch of sound cards, whole bunch of network cards, SCSI cards. It does a CFFA, which is why would you do that? But it does it. It's got a whole bunch of language cards. And in all these cases, what you can do is you can instantly boot up a system, tell it what slot it's in, and then say, okay, I want an Apple II with this in slot 2 and a sound card, and then I want to have it be networked and give it this much RAM, and then boom, you're sitting there. It's instantly there. And I've actually had cases where, in the beginning, when this was all new to me, when I would have a bunch of windows open because I was working on some sort of development, and I would start to close the windows, and I would be like, I'm throwing away like a dozen Apple IIs. Just, oh, you're done, just pushing them out the window of my trailer. And it has other ones that are not working. So the way that MAME works is that they'll implement the skeleton of a driver, and it sort of works, but usually doesn't, and they classify it as not working. And then over time, if they think sufficiently that there's been enough work on it and all the aspects are handled, it gets promoted. So within the code, you can see, oh, there's something called an Apple IIc Plus, but nobody's worked with one enough. Just yesterday we were looking at something, a joystick, a particularly obscure joystick, and the idea is that you could send that to them and have them evaluate it and figure out what its pinouts are, and then add that support to MAME. So over time, more and more and more obscure things added. So this is why I put my horse behind MAME. Is just because MAME is add stuff to us, make it better, please do it, and I'll get closer to that, right? So buried within the MAME system is, because it's a relatively disparate group of people, are comments, and I mean a lot of comments, and it's on GitHub these days. So there's MAME is a GitHub project, and if you go to it right now, you'll notice changes happening on the rate of 40 or 50 changes a day. And every month there's a new release of this program. And as of this year, the difference between last year and this year is what I was calling JS Mess, which was a series of patches that had their own GitHub that would make MAME compilable to JavaScript. They absorbed it in March. And what that means is that there's actually now a compile flag for just make it in JavaScript. And so we stopped working on that. We're not focused on that anymore because MAME is just doing it for us now. And we've done 2 upgrades since then. So MAME puts an upgrade out. So our new upgrade is here. We have a system-weighted system, and what that means is how many programs on the archive are emulated this way. A bunch of them are Spectrum, ZX, a bunch are Apple II. Compile those first and shove them up, and then do the other 1,000 things we do later. But what that really means for you is that within 45 minutes of MAME being released, the Apple II drivers on the Internet Archive are updated on the site. And that means that if you do submit changes, or changes happen, or you ask for a requested fix or something, it gets reflected incredibly quickly. Especially we can do a hot fix. We can actually have them update the driver because it just fixed something, and we can slam it into the archive in seconds. So this is a much better experience, and I want to be clear how little I have to do with this. Okay, let's be clear about that, because sometimes people go, oh, so Jason did this emulation system when they write it. I'm like, no! Jason just has a dream, and his dream is expansive, and he is very loud when he talks in his sleep. So that's what's happened here. The MAME people don't need me, and I am not doing things for them in code. I am shoving people together. I am linking people together. That is a very different role than developer. There are some amazing developers, and if you go into the code, for instance, here's the driver for the Swift card. You will see the names of who created it and why, and it's all been GPL'd, who's contributed what. And then they actually have gone as far, in some cases, making ASCII pictures of the chipset, along with indications of what those chip names are, because they're dumping the ROMs and integrating between them. So they're trying to document it permanently. And if you look at the thing, it'll have a to-do list. Here's what we think is wrong. Here's what we think isn't working. So when people go, well, I booted, and it didn't work, it's like, yeah, it's on the to-do list. Would you like to write something for it? Because the code is right there. Here's all the pins. This thing actually goes on forever. It's got the pinouts, it's got the cabling, it's got everything. It's got how to reach it. And in some cases, it links to archive.org manuals to try to show what things were. There was one program, one variation where they basically, somebody wrote an article in one of the magazines. It might have been Insider. It was probably Insider or Creative Computing about, like, I built this device, and it had schematics, and they just emulated it. So they're just emulating people's articles now. All right, so let's get down there, right? So hopefully people here have some now slightly greater cognizance of what the context of the MAME and JS mess and Emularity emulators are within the archive system. All right, so let's get down there. Again, on the outside, this looks easy and fun. Inside, it's not. This is actually my car. Well, this was my car before I gave it to somebody. He owns it now. That's my transmission. That's what it looks like inside. But you're not supposed to see the inside of it, just like you're not supposed to see the inside of your pet. So I gave it to a guy. Anyway, so down underneath the archive, things are weird. So one of the first things that happens is that somebody here is, they're all My Little Pony once I talk to them, and then they're like, I went in there and I just didn't get it. I didn't get it. And I just want to step back to why is the Internet Archive like it is? And again, it's a millionaire's dream. He wanted to have the Library of Alexandria live again. So what he loves is books. That's critical to understand. He loves books. He loves people being able to read books, to learn from books. He wants people to be able to wake up in the morning and be like, I want to read something untoward that my local library doesn't have. Boom, I'm looking at it. Oh man, how do I do electrical engineering? Boom, electrical engineering book. Read on your own time and your own pace and the way you want to make yourself better. And then going, well, what else did this author do? Oh, he did this. I'm also interested in that. And he wants that knowledge and the kind of the amplification of the human race to be one of, like, you have access to all of the world's information without feeling gatekeeped or being limited or anything else. And that's great. And then over time, a bunch of us who have helped him have come in with, like, because we think that also means blank. And to varying degrees, he goes, yeah, I could see that, or I don't understand that at all. No. And it's just been a case of working with him. So at the Internet Archive, everything is an item, because everything is a book. So each book is an item. So we have an item, and the item has a unique URL or an identifier up in the top, and that identifier is meant never to change. And this URL schema is meant to be permanent, regardless of if they're moved around machines or whatever else. It's just meant to be permanent. So here you have a book. Here on the left you have, like, what the book is supposedly about. When it's published, it has other information. And of course you can immediately click on this book and begin reading it. And that was critical, right? In the browser, boom. I want to see what this Topeka, Kansas City record looks like. Boom, I'm reading it like it's just a book. And we have 4 different types of objects. So there's texts, movies, music, and web. Now web is the Wayback Machine. Everyone's used that. That's a separate interface. But then there's texts, movies, and music. And movies, when he put it together, and music are just books. So music is just a book you listen to in the Internet Archive system. And the way you're reading it is by playing a player. Okay? So whenever it's got some weird aspects, like people want it to run in the background, or people want to build a playlist. Since you don't do that with books, you don't build a book list and let the book read in the background, our system doesn't support it out of the box easily yet, because we're still designed that old way. It's literally like you scooped out a shelf and you threw a bunch of CDs in it. Same thing with movies. Movies are books you watch. And so you interact with them, but you're just meant to be able to play them immediately. And going back, we're like, I want to play this music. I want to read this book. I want to watch this movie. That's how it's designed from the ground up. So when I came along with my ridiculous idiot approach, which was I want the browser to do all the work, which wins on some things and loses on others. I think the bet has been good, but it wins on ubiquity, and I wanted that, and instantaneous, and scalability. I was like, why not software? And so he was like, okay, how do you do that? Come work with my developers. And his developers are being implemented at between 200 and 400% capacity. They're just working their butts off. So working with them was extremely agitative, not because it was particularly they're bad people or anything, but I was like, while making sure this ridiculous fantasy thing live and go to the most people, please do something nobody has ever done for me who can't even contribute code. So what we ended up with is this, right? So now you go, oh, you made a book you can play. And it is. It is a book that is inside of a screen that has a disk drive and will play things. And all of its aspects feed from that. So it's got full screen because the movies and the books both have full screen. It has the ability to quiet itself because the music can quiet itself. But it can't do a bunch of other things yet. But it will. I'm very, very positive it will, and most of the work of getting it in there and going. But it also has a metadata system that's extremely weird because it means that it's all aimed towards this is an item. But as we know in software, it's not always an item, right? Like it's a multiple disks. What do you do if there's multiple disks? What do you do if there's different editions? What do you do if there's a manual? Like, we don't have hybrid items. So you can't be like, this is a thing and a thing, and here's the soundtrack, here's the movie, here's the book, and shove them into one item and have it work. They've got to be separate items. So that's where that's coming from. And there's different ways of dealing with it. Interlinking in the metadata, making an external interface that links back to the archive and does all that work for you. All of these are kind of floating out there. And so what you'll see instead is there'll be 3 different items. They'll all be in a collection, and the collection will maintain that stuff. Buried down here is this thing, and these are settings that the Internet Archive does itself and that a person can do. And they're all just called metadata pairs. And God bless you if you've never had to deal with content management or dealing with metadata pairs or triples. And basically it's you have an item, a metadata name, and then a metadata entry. So the identifier, which was assigned upon birth, is A2 underscore Castle underscore Wolfenstein 1981, use A. And I created that based on the file name of the disk image, which is very rough, but it tends to work. Skip past those. Scanner is because it used to be books. So which book scanner created it? And the book scanner that created it is a Python program that uploaded the disk. Public date is when the book was first made public. Added date is when it was first added to the entire environment. And because of the way I do it, see, normally there would be an entry for your book came into the warehouse. That's the the added date. It was added into the system. Somebody should scan this someday. Then between 6 seconds and 2 years, and it's not often 6 seconds, the book is scanned and then added, and then that's the public date. So, because it's uploaded instantly, those 2 periods are very close to each other on this. That's what you're seeing there. Date was added by looking through the file name and going 1981. And then the language of the thing is English, But what that really means is, what does the OCR of the book scanner expect to look at to figure out how to OCR this book? So it's like you're like running a business out of the wrong place. Like you're the nicest computer store in the fish market. Everybody else is a fish market. And you're like, well, like when the fish gut truck comes by, you're like, okay, yeah, I drank some soda. And you just have no connection to what's going on. So that's what it is. These software packages are weird books. Let's get back to these three. And this is so we had this problem of how do we tell the system that what they're looking at is a program versus a book? Like how do you turn on the emulator? What's your indication that it's an emulator? And the way we did that was we had two metadata pairs to indicate what to do, and a media type, which again was previously web, texts, movies, audio, and so on. We added one that said software. So if your metadata type for media type is software, and both of those settings, emulator and emulator ext, are set, then the program will add the emulator. It might not work, but that's what turns on the emulator. So sometimes people will upload disks, and they're just sitting there, and they're like, where's my disk? It's not booting. And I'm like, well, because you had to tell it what it was. So those are the two settings, right? Emulator, which there I have set to Apple E2E. These are the currently working ones. And I want to be clear, this isn't because this is all we can do. This is just because this was easiest for me, because there's a one-person operation. So these are the machines that were getting the most interest and use. So the Apple III, the Apple II GS, and then I'm not even using a lot of these Apple IIs right now. I'm actually mostly using Apple II EE, so the Apple II E Extended. And the reason why is because it has a couple of those double modes, and it's got 128K, and when you slam in thousands of images, that is the one most likely to work. So I just slam in 1,000 images, run it on a really good system that you got in 1989 off a garage sale, and then it'll run. But a real person will come back, hopefully that real person is me or another person, and go, well, it needs a language card, or it would be better if it ran on a 2C, or it was designed for this. This is how we set them. There is a configuration file for each emulator type. And what this is doing is this is feeding these entries to the internal emulator. And right now, I have to create these machine types, but anybody here, anybody out there can request a machine type. I really wish you had an Apple II with a Mockingbird in it. And I would go, great, set the emulator to Apple II-Mocking, and I will make it work. And it's a little weird, but I'm just gonna, it's the deep dive, ladies and gentlemen. So this is just a nomenclature for my own happiness. This is the actual JavaScript that is the emulator. This is the ROM/BIOS that needs to be booted to make it work. There is a setting to go, where do the things come in? And it's called flop 1. You can have a cassette. If you want me to do it, I'll do it. Take dot waves and shove them into a cassette interface. That'll be a great afternoon for you. Native resolution is what to set the JavaScript window at when it boots up. And then extra args is a set of stuff that no normal human being should have to look at, but I'm putting it here for you anyway. In this slot, put a disk 2. In this slot, I don't even know what that does. So an Apple II EP is an Apple II Platinum. So it's basically another one of the sets. They're all given short names. So like an Atari 800 is an 800, an Atari 2600, A2600, and so on. Those are all the things you delete. So it's like the Swift card, maybe you start to see some of the same things. I put a name in here. It's still running one of the same emulator, but it's feeding, and it's still running the same, BIOS. It's still doing all that, but I had to add, in slot 3, there's something called a Swift. So that was the only difference. If you compare them, that's pretty much the only thing that's being changed. It's just got this extra little bit. And so I can add a Mockingboard support in 6 seconds by just saying, oh, there's a thing called a Mockingboard, and here's what that's called. Do. What this does is it says whatever's sitting inside of this item, whatever has this extension is an emulator-ready program. So there's a .do. There's a .do, .dsk, .bin, .po, .nib, and .2mg for the Apple IIgs emulator and for a system that you can set up an Apple II with it. And that's 2 meg. But, I mean, most of you know that, but that's what that is. So it takes these disk images and it can feed them in. It's actually capable of taking .wave. It's actually capable of taking some other audio formats for the cassette port, but we haven't supported it because nobody wants that, but we have it. And so the idea is to take whatever MAME the place is agnostic. They don't care about, like, well, you know, the nibble format is really complicated. Much better than the disk format. They don't care. Make 100 formats. Just tell us how they're read. We don't care. So if somebody here was to create, say, a better, you know, we've discussed this, like, wouldn't it be great to do a great copy-protected disk down to, like, the mega whatever track, perfect, pulled from an EDD, and we named it .waz. You could add .waz support. Oh, and you're like, where's .edd? The reason why is because EDD is actually really, really hard. It actually turns out to be really, really hard. Like, bleeding face is hard. And there's a bunch of reasons why, and it's really boring, but it just comes down to it's not as easy as a .dsk, which is a fully listing of all the sectors. That's the only reason it's not there. But if somebody figures it out, it can go in. MAME will be like, that's great. It goes in. 45 minutes later, it's on the Internet Archive, because I will push it through, and suddenly we have copy-protected disks just booting natively in the browser. Which would be nice. When it launches, this is the emularity. So the emularity is this loading part. So what you see here is it's pulling data from the Internet Archive. It's looking, it's saying, have I grabbed the BIOS from the BIOS cache? Do I have the disk, the game file? Do I have the config file for the system? That's that slot thing. And when they all run, it just launches and it works. And then you are inside and it's running. Now, when I'm adding stuff, this is what I use. And this has been one employee's 2-year project. And it's an Internet Archive Python client. And it basically turns all of the interactions with the Internet Archive into a command line interface, which is what I prefer. So it's called, when it installs a client called IA. IA can search, IA can update your metadata, IA can upload files, IA can do evaluations, IA can do a whole bunch of operations, pretty much everything you'd want to do, but allows a robot to do it. Because all I care about is building a robot army that plays video games all day. And as of this week, there's 10,000 booting Apple II images on the Internet Archive. And so what had happened was I was like, I got to do something for KansasFest. Those people like apples. And so I went to Asimov, and I realized that I had not synchronized Asimov to the Internet Archive. And again, part of the reason that inspired me to do this speech was people would mention, oh, I've grabbed all this obscure stuff and I put it on Asimov, and I'm like, what the heck? And what had happened is that I realized it's because there was too great a barrier to entry. And so I wanted to start to give ideas of like, I could also upload it using that, or I could improve it, or a person could write an interface to IA from an Apple II that when you pop it in, it gets uploaded to the archive. There's actual mechanisms that are available. But until then, I was more than happy to synchronize. I had not downloaded from Asimov for 3 years. And I've just been adding. They're still going up. It's going to be more than 10,000 by the time I'm done. But it's just adding disks all the time right now, uploading all the time. And it looks really boring, but it results in this, right? So these are all these emulated programs, and these are screenshots from them booting. And as you can see, the naming system is completely inconsistent. You can see that they are kind of weird. Sometimes the screenshots are odd. There's all sorts of programs. They all work in varying degrees of good. They're all running right now pretty much on that Apple IIe extended. And the screenshots are coming from something I call the screen shotgun. And the screen shotgun is basically this script. And so this script is just banging down a copy. Oh, it's doing two things. It's running a headless Firefox. It takes a bunch of shots of that Firefox running for about 2 minutes, pressing random keys at one point, just going, I am here, I am bored, yeah, and then we're done here, goodbye. And then consolidating the unique ones, and then saying whichever one is biggest must be the most interesting. And then makes that the official screenshot. And this works very well, except for when it really doesn't. Like when you open up that bag of chips and you're like, whoa! Wow, what happened here? And it's like, well, it mostly works unless it's this. So every screenshot you're seeing, and this is something that's hard to get across to people, unless, because you guys have heard me yammer about it, but like people will be like, wow, you got Wizard of Words. What did you think of it? I'm like, I don't know that. My robots literally uploaded it, played it for me, derived an opinion of what looked good on it, put it up there, and went on to the next one endlessly while I did nothing. And so I hope it's a good one. But it's literally that. So all these programs, I've played a small number where someone will say, oh my God, or if I want to pull up some Twitter juice, I'll kind of like scroll through because there's always something hilarious. Like over here is one to teach you how to do CPR. Can you just imagine? Just all right, Chris! Grandpa will live. And one of the other side effects is that because it's doing screenshots, it composes up these animated GIFs as the screenshot. So what you're seeing here is it's actually literally playing the game, and it's taking screenshots as it goes, and then creates the thing, and it makes that the screenshot. So on the archive, it looks like it's playing it in the background, but really it's a big, fat, animated GIF. And you'll notice that, once again, you're going to see one shot that is there twice. That one. So it'll go away, then it comes back, then it does the rest, and the reason why is because the screen shotgun went, that's the biggest one, and it added it to the beginning of the GIF. So that way it's always something there. All I care about now, as a result, is closing the air gap. That's my number one thing. People are like, what are you up to, Mr. Software Dude? And all the software preservationists aren't sure what to do about me. By software preservation, I don't mean collectors, I mean institutions. Because we're breaking. All the rest of them are like, we need to have a meeting about a subcommittee, about organizing a tribunal to be able to set together a set of guidelines for the next group in 5 years that will come up with a solution set path. And I'm like, there are 10,000 programs up! And literally, and this just keeps happening to them, where they're like, yeah, we're thinking of having a meeting about, this thing, and I'm like, I'm on NPR! And they just, I just told NPR this is how software preservation works, and they're like, oh. So being the Speedy Gonzalez of an institutional realm is nice, but it also means that I'm now like way thinking about stuff way beyond, like, should we do this? Like, should we do this doesn't really come up a lot with me. It's mostly, what did I just do? And so as a result, I'm more like, okay, ubiquitous emulation forever is already up and it's running. What does that mean? What's important? And the first thing is just the air gap, which is that there's a bunch of data sitting on just plastic, rotting corpses, and they need to be digitized in some way that is, as portable as possible. And there's a lot of problems where sometimes you'll do it and the image you take could be better. Better technology comes along, whatever, but I'm like, do it badly first. And that's a philosophical difference. Some people are like, if you can't do it badly, if you're going to do it badly, don't do it at all. And I'm like, disagree. That's if you can imagine a conference like this, except just worse in many, 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 many ways, that's what that would be. Me in the hallway going, no, we should. And they're like, no. Well, who cares? And so this is like where this guy sent me a box of like, here's all the discs of the Corpus Christi Apple users group from '86. I have no idea what they are. He just mails it to me. And so I've got these things, and I slam through them, and people are sending me discs, and I'm like, awesome. And then I put them in crates, and I love this shot. People are like, those are nice milk crates. I'm like, those are not milk crates. this is actually 2 of the 7 boxes that are the Internet Archive software collection right now. There are CDs and other boxes and everything. And everything's going into this warehouse like this for me to go, okay. And then when someone comes along and goes, we'd like to scan it. I'm like, you can take the pretty pictures whenever you want. Come on by. But I want to get the data off them because I'm worried about the data. So I have been really fast with the floppies. Because this is my room. This is one side of my room. This is the Apple II that should look like a dog that realizes it's going to carry a tractor trailer behind it. And a lot of these are floppies. These are Apple II floppies. There's some CDs. There's some CDs down here that are being worked on. And this is just my inbox. So all I care about is getting these things up as fast as possible and then working out the rest of it. Because you can always take a picture. You can always scan it. But to get that digital data off. So this is what I end up with. Is a bunch of disk images. And put them up in the archive. Because what I'm concerned about is there's this whole thing where, again, I call it it's incrementalism. Like, do we concern ourselves with like getting it right the first time, or do we get it sort of right in as non-destructive a fashion as possible, and then reiterate, and get better as we go? So what the Internet Archive has done is putting up these programs has forced a full accounting and reckoning of what represents the Apple II corpus. And we are, of course, now discovering in a realm where we can now play them, compare them. There's a script that will download them, that'll let you compare them. That'll be probably one of my next projects, is to pull down an MD5 and SAHA1 every disk image on the archive, which is a weekend project to write the script. And then have it go through the 10,000 and go, actually, these are doubled, and what's this thing? And I've got a better name for this. And then once I've got that, create a table, because I was doing it anyway, and then hand that table out, right? And go like, oh, you've downloaded a disk image? Here, run it through my script. And my script will go, oh yeah, I already got this one, thanks. Oh, I don't have this one, thanks. And go forward. And that's where I'm working, right? That's the iterative magic of what we're actually trying to function with right now. We're discovering where we did good and where we didn't do so good. Like everybody's got that one copy of Beautiful Boot that's got Starblazer. But not everybody will have like a fully functioning contributory set of supplemental programs for some peripheral that was really cool, or interim versions of a program, or the version of Sabotage that has the title screen, or the version of Broderbund, because Broderbund shot out a bunch of little programs that then died immediately. They were like, let's try this. No! And they would just throw it out. So it was, there's like a lot of little obscure, low-run Broderbunds, a lot of low-run EAs, a lot of low-run that were just like, oh, I guess nobody ever saved this because nobody wanted it because it was dumb. But for free, it's okay. And so they look at it and it's meaningful because, like cut and paste. I don't know how many people ever used cut and paste. Like that was EA trying to do a rock star word processor. Turned out not to do a very big thing. But cut and paste is a representation of the historical overt. Plus it's fun. And so, anyway, the point is that I'm trying to kind of avoid this kind of weird loss of data. And so, all right, I've just talked for way too long, way too hard, way too much. And I'm sorry. I'll dab your tears, but I'll also answer questions. And like I said, the fundamental reason of what I'm bringing this all up in here is that the Internet Archive wants to be a dependable resource with a fully open source stack for making Apple IIs live again, both as a reference material, as a platform, and as a way to be able to work with items. And the Emularity being open source means that you can put it locally on your system. And I always want to do work that people can pull away and not be dependent on one institution, because that's how we get in trouble, right? So everything about the archive, you can completely recreate your own infrastructure for your program. You can have a demo version of your Apple program you wrote when you were younger and have it running in a blog entry. You can create on your, try out my new game that I'm working on and just dump the disk image into this Emularity that boots up in your blog entry and have people use it. So that's a real thing that we have right now. It'll run on your phone and it'll be interactive as an Apple II would. That's what I'm looking for. And we're pushing, I'm not saying I don't want the hardware. I'm not saying I don't want people to be involved in it. What I'm trying to do is set it up so that in 20 years, to pull it over to to the other side. On the Internet Archive, there is one program. This program runs the planet. If anything on my browser or anything is terrible, I apologize ahead of time. The Oregon Trail MS-DOS 1992 version. And you hit it, again, I just decided to run it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're playing Oregon Trail. So I've turned the experience of trying an MS-DOS program into a 5-second investment, and then this is Oregon Trail. And if you're really weird, you can say I want to full screen it and have it not show up, but that's okay. And this is now booted every 8 seconds around the country. And again, without informing us, this is just because I'm the social media hound, I have determined that at least 3 school districts and another 20 schools have made it part of their curriculum. And I mean using it at the Internet Archive. So that's a thing, right? The schools are now using the Oregon Trail again. They were ready to use it at the end of time, and it just became harder and harder and harder and harder and harder to use. And when the support went away, the well-written education programs, the well-written games, the well-written learning programs all went away. And those were what we have, coming back. So there are pieces in here. If we go to the software library Apple, just to show you. Oh boy, there we go. Pull this to here. And we go to collections. So I would love to show you games, but there's one thing. It's Mr. Sensitive talking. As people play things, things rise to the top as the most played things. And strip poker always wins. Strip poker has an amazing capacity to catch the eye and say, hey, yeah, I'm in a museum. I'm just, It's like there's those 1 or 2 paintings where people are like, these brushworks. Brush stroke is amazing. Anyway, so let's just go with operating systems. Oh God, no, I'm just kidding. But what you see here is a variety of, a small number of operating systems. So you're able to say, like, what was David DOS like? What's Diversi-DOS version 2C? But more than that, a person will look at this and go, well, there were more than 2 versions of Diversi-DOS, more versions of Apple DOS. You should look for them. There was also another DOS variant that was, and by sharing that information in this group space, we're creating that needed documentation of what's going to go forward. That's the next thing. That's what I care about. That's where we're going. So that's what I got going on. That's the deep dive of the Emularity. We're still working on it. We're still making it better. The emulation job is not mine. It's being done by others. I encourage everyone to be involved with that who wants to be. We had a blind user come in to the main area. I watched him do this. He had been using my programs, my booting, and he went to them and said, you don't have the right kilohertz set on the sound card for the blind people. You have it at like 48, it should really be 44. So they fixed it. Now it sounds right. Like it just worked. And I had another user go into their code and fix all the spelling errors. Just little things here and there. But they did like 100 changes. They're like, yeah. 9 years ago, somebody wrote this wrong. I fixed them all. And so the whole thing is starting to we are in a really good cyclotron now. So I encourage you to be a part of that. I encourage you to go through these. I encourage you to help me make the descriptions better, the way we put them in better, and also to just keep enjoying the machines you have in front of you now while you still have them, because this will be waiting for you at the end. Thank you very much. If anybody has any questions, oh God. All right, let's start. I'm going to go this way, I'm going left to right. Go ahead.
So if we have a game that, let's say you have the disk image up there, but we have the manual or some other, the box or something.
Sure.
We scan that in. How can we edit your page to link, say, the disk image to our uploaded, say, PDF of the manual?
Currently, there is no way in the Internet Archive system for there to be collaborative editing of the metadata of objects. I have come up with some ideas that I wanted to do, which was I would suck a collection into a wiki, people would edit it, and then we'd pull the data back. But what it really comes down to is that there's really no way to do that functionally, because the books would be kind of static individuals. And people who weren't happy about that with the books created something called Open Library. Now, Open Library is, again, the Internet Archive, but it's a different interface to our books. So you have these books here, and you can actually sign out books and read books and look what's going on and do something. But if you look at a given book, its slogan is, there's a page for every book. So when you look at this thing, this is a description of it, and then there's subjects, and somebody has put this together to some extent. And if you look up at the top here, it's got an edit button. And if I hit the edit button, it says go away. Let me do that again. Oh, because I'm not logged in. Let's see if it does. Oh, I'm not going to do that today. Never log in on stage. Dumb. Anyway, so you hit edit, it'll pop up everything, and then you can submit changes. So that was actually designed by Aaron Schwartz. So that was that idea. We just don't have it for software yet, but I would like to see that. So improve metadata. So that's the idea, but we're not there yet.
Yep.
But if you tell me that you've done work, I'll do it for the moment. You first, and then you.
Okay. Do you get many pull-down requests from lawyers?
Do I get pull-down requests? I never get any.
I guess the corporate.
Yeah. Yes. What is many? So the Internet Archive has this approach that right now there's a bunch of material that's out there, and there's a sliver of it which still has commercial aspects, living owners, or any kind of relationship to contemporary space whatsoever. And the problem is that we move from volunteer to automatic copyright of all things instantly for the rest of our lives, forever essentially. It's perpetual copyright in practice. For all items, anything you write ever, which is an incredible burden. And so what the archive has done is set up a very good, very responsive takedown system for when people tell us we've gone too far in a certain direction. And so Apple, so if we want to keep, so letters are always flying by of varying degrees to some extent, and there's people whose job is to handle that. For the Apple II, there are a set of books that are still sold. So sometimes they show up in a bookload or a thing, and it'll be like, oh, like for instance, let's take it out of town instead of it being a hot button issue in this community. Arcade manuals. Like the companies don't really particularly care about the arcade manuals, so they're all up on the archive. Except there's this one manual that always ends up in the arcade manuals, and it's not a manual. It looks like a manual. It's not. It's like so you're gonna with the sexy, sure to get you a date on the train title of so you wanted to gauss your monitor. It's all about like how to fix an arcade monitor, and it was written by a guy in 2001, and he's kind of done revisions, and he sells it for like $5. And so it gets scooped up, and it gets uploaded, and people upload it. And the guy writes us, and it's like, oh, guys, it's my book again. And we're like, oh, sorry, and it goes down. It's whatever. So there you have a case of like, there's like this one book in that realm that looks like the others, and everyone's like, I'm not supposed to be on this train. And so that happens. So there's some contemporary space of that. But, you know, in the Apple area, there's such a vast amount of discarded material, and just the process of bringing it in means that some evaluation is done, but sometimes it surprises you, things get renamed. Certainly as we move forward to like MD5 hashes and things like that, things get knocked out and there'll be a blacklist. You know, when we put up the arcade machines, we put up 1,001 arcade machines. I had some awesome phone calls. And now there's 675 arcade machines. The Atari lawyer is named Catherine. She's very nice. And the Nintendo lawyer is named George. He's not nice. But that's the thing, right? So they write and they go like that. It was $1 trillion of copyright infringement. That it actually pulled in 54 million real dollars of ad dollars along the side. That's big, 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 big. There's nothing with that with the archive. If you're angry at us, just keep clicking on stuff because it's costing us a lot of money. Just keep hitting it. And just, yeah, that's it. That's how you get us. So, it's a weird answer, but I mean, I'm not, like, it's a risk, I guess, to some, but to me, it's like, if we don't do it, it all goes away. And I'd rather go to bed or be in my deathbed not being like, oh, well, I didn't raise a fuss. I'll work it out. That's what that answer is. In the back behind you was another one. Hello? Did you still have a question?
It's partially addressed, I think, by the other questions, but it would be nice if there was some kind of request to you that might have to be externally archived, saying, here's something I know exists, there's an older version of the archive, how many is someone willing to scan it so that we can coordinate activities externally somehow.
Yeah, there was a guy who wrote on one of the boards. I think it was the Apple II. I hope he's in the room. Nah, screw that camera. Sorry, future. He was wondering about, like, is there a way to communicate about core scans and things like that, coordinating to make things better. And I had some guy on one of the vintage groups, and I forget which one. I'm on like 9. And vintage groups on Facebook are always a great source for me. And somebody posted it, and if you're here, I'm not sorry. And it was something along the lines of like, yeah, I've kind of stopped using the Internet Archive. Their scans are really poor. Yeah, it's like they're not very good. They really need to be 600 DPI, much better images. Now I was like, son of a bitch, this is a reflection of what it was out there. Like, that's why I did it. Like, this is what's out there. Turns out, this version, the only one we ever have, is because some kind soul used an Apple scanner in 1989 and scanned it. And it's a 6 DPI image, 4 blocks, and it's up there, and it's awful. Now, to us. So we should improve it. Thank you, old guy, for that. Now let's make the better version. Let's do the 600 DPI version. Let's do the TIFF. We know better. We can do it. We can rescan it. It turns out it's important. We can clean it up. Some of us have a slight business cleaning something up and making arrangements and turning that new cleaned up thing into a better product. Great, do it. That's a maintained, obvious object. And so that's why I'm like, whenever they're like, it's not as good, I'm like, yes, that's true. That is exactly true. But it's been there. And if you're telling me it's a better world, that you had to go to wonderworld.org/edu /Bob special space / dot over here / whatever PDF, I will not believe you. So that's what that thinking is. Did I heat up there? I probably heat up a little bit. Go ahead.
You may have sort of answered this question along the way. But
When every answer is 45 minutes long, you tend to answer the end
well, when
questions
you
first.
said that the robot picked the image that was going to put up,
Yep. A dumb
you
robot.
can go back and fix that.
Sure. Instantly.
Like that, right?
Instantly.
Okay.
I can, because I have a script-based system, I've written all sorts of crazy things. So there's these scripts, like there's one called Jump Around. Jump Around, I can just dump names in, and it'll go. Because sometimes the robot's not so happy. Like, you can see right now, this one's actually building as it goes. It's not quite done. And they look pretty good, right? And I'll look down it, and we get a lot of ones like that, which are like unable to load ProDOS, and I'm like, oh, bummer. Or whatever, can't run a soft disk, can't do a thing. But then this one's actually doing pretty good in terms of this. Oh, like, see like that? Like this guy. Yeah, it is probably the most complicated image that is produced.
But
It's extremely uninformative. And if a person was to click on it and put it into the system, I'll bet, like, within a second, it'll be like, boom, and it'll be something better. But see that? See how it's doing that? And so it's loading it in, and then it's going to go, oh, and that's kind of what you want. No. And so what it's done actually is, if you look down here, there are a bunch of JPEG files. So this is each of the screenshots, which, by the way, you can download and use in all your blogs in any way you want, for any criticism, for any writing, research. That's why I did it. I did them with no watermarks, none of that crap. I've destroyed the screenshot market. I don't ever want to see a watermark on a friggin' screenshot again. I'm like, no, robots have done it for you. You're fired. Don't act like that was a big deal. But you go to it, and you see how this one is, 263? And then you go back to it, and you're like, yeah, how about screenshot 4? Boom. So I will probably write a script that will like show me things really quickly, and I'll just be clicking on them, going, "That's the good one. That's the good one." Anything that's machine augmented, and I'll just be like, "Use that, use that, use that," and it'll just make them better, and it'll use them. That's my hope. That's the cleanup phase. So, to a lesser extent, Moby Games, which is the collection of Moby Games is kind of a database of things. Let me know when I'm going too long. Am I going too long? 1 minute? Okay. Moby Games is kind of like the database of all things. So when you go to Moby Games, it's meant to be kind of like, it's meant to be for games, video games database, but it's a nonprofit now, and it's owned by these, and so what it has here is all of this, and I've made a deal with them that I can absorb the data from them into the archive. And I really want them to make it for everything. I want these Moby apps. I want them to have like every program and app ever created in Moby Games. But if you go in here and you say, I think this should work, let's find out. So something that needs that, and then here's a bunch of programs that have been added to Moby Games. And you go to Castle Wolfenstein, and then see how there's been stuff added. Somebody's written the description, they've got the credits. You can go, what else did this guy do? And you click on it, and then here's his information. So I mean, they've been working on this and like doing it, and they've given me full permission to absorb this into the archive, and I do. So that's an example of like, I really want to see better and better and better stuff by leveraging who does their job better. Moby Games does collaborative software information better. And we do emulation better. And then they've got an open invitation that they've not taken yet to have things boot in a window on their side when they, But they're really small, really unhappy and strapped, and so they're just happy every day when it stays up. So anyway, so that's what that is. Any other questions before I give up? So yeah, John, go ahead and then.
Yeah. So I'm wondering about peripherals. So paddles, joystick, can we use a modem to call BBS?
Sure. You can use joysticks. Like you can plug a gamepad in; it'll work. There's absolutely support for serial out. There's support in theory to be able to maintain other ones. If there's somebody who's made a hardware card, they'll support it. Like if somebody's made like a USB connector, but we've done that. So there's definitely that. More in places like consoles than the Apple II, but it does exist. And so yeah, no, eventually you might be able to do some piece like that. And I think one last question, which was over. Oh, you're right here.
I was wanting to take some of your scripts and add things like, for ProDOS disks, even just the ability to say, identify which version of ProDOS that is. How do we help you make the metadata stuff better? I mean, how do we help?
So one easy way to help me, if you want like an incremental piece, is to give me code that makes a smart choice and then I implement it into things. Like it's trivial. We've certainly, Kevin did this with me last year where it's gone through a whole pile of these, pulled out the directory information and shoved it into the description. Very useful. And to make metadata pairs that say, here's what version this is ProDOS version. Like we can add metadata pairs until the cows come home on this thing. That's one of the things about the archive, it's very expansive. So if there's a metric that's important to people, like it's classified as a game, it's a certain kind of disk, it's a sector, it's this, it's whatever, we can do it. So if that turns out to be of value to people, and there's a way to do it relatively easy, I'll do it happily. But like I said, the problem right now is that the Internet Archive software collection, software department, is literally me. Literally me. That means both physical ingestion, outreach, volunteer coordination, and slight weird code improvements to things that put things on the archive. So I will always, as a result, and I mean this is just simple project management, I will always lean towards let the machine do all the work poorly than to have one human being do it. Because I get people like, I could do that, and I'm like, and you will die doing it. Because I had one guy, he created 1,401 metadata pairs per item. And he had 15 items.
Oh.
But they're great! Holy crap! 1,500 Metadata pairs. Oh man, send that to Pluto. But that's the problem. That's the metrics. And I'm like, it boots up. It looks like this. And I hope that, and I want to see it better. I want this to be a pantheon of library. That's enough. I've taken up too much time. Thank you. Huge thanks to everybody who's on my Facebook friends list, not ruining my life as I lose control and happiness. All right, man.
Okay, we've got a lunch break, and then the next session is at 11 a.m. and it's Catherine's molding and resin cards workshop.